So, good morning, everyone who's watching this on replay, and good morning to our attendees today as well. And a lovely big welcome to our speaker today, which is Chaytor-Norris, who is here to talk to us about discovering the vitality and energy of kind of self-care and looking after yourselves with food. So, I'm going to hand it over to Kate. We're going to have quite an informal I was going to say speech, but that doesn't really sound quite right, does it? But an informal chat, I think, is nicer this morning about Kate. She's going to, as I say, obviously speak to us about what I've just described, but also she's going to be mentioning her book today and telling us a little bit more about her consultations as well, if she feels she'd like to. So, over to you, Kate, and please feel free to introduce yourself and first of all.
Yeah, well, thank you everybody for tuning in. And I'm a nutritional therapist. I've been practicing for about 12 years. And I recently written a book just because a lot of my clients, I find when they come to a consultation, I end up bombarding them with so much information about our environment and all the things that could possibly be, knocking their bodies off kilter. And they also go, oh, you should write a book. And I was like, oh, no, sounds like too much hard work. Anyway, the book was done, and it's been a fantastic tool for me and a very cathartic process to get all my angst about all the things we have in our environment down in a book. So today I wasn't just going to talk about food because I think the situation that we are all in has, 21st century living is pretty stressful anyway, but what we've all experienced in the last 18 months has been kind of beyond anybody's imagination. And so I kind of wanted to look at the stress response and what we can do to help with that. Because effectively, our stress response is completely out of date. We're still kind of running on when we were living in caves. So that whenever we experience a stressful thought, our body is preparing to fight the saber-toothed tiger. And unfortunately, we haven't evolved enough to deal with this kind of chronic 21st century stress, which is not life-threatening, but it's kind of around quite a lot of the time. So basically what we need to, there's lots of things that we can be doing. But when our body is preparing for fighting and flighting, it kind of kiboshes everything because, your blood pressure goes up, your blood sugar levels go up. All the things in the body that keep us and maintain our health, all the kind of general housekeeping jobs, get shelved because actually it's not important for you to digest your breakfast or fight an infection in your big toe or do regeneration and repair of the gut when you're about to be eaten by a tiger. So all of those things can kind of get kiboshed. And that's what I find when people are kind of running long-term stress, that particularly the digestion seems to go AWOL, because one of the main things is producing stomach acid. Now, stomach acid is really hard work for the body to create. It's amazing stuff. It's pH 2. It's really powerful. If we are stressed, that mechanism and the digestive enzyme production just, doesn't work so well. So we start, we're eating foods, putting it into the stomach where there isn't enough stomach acid. And so we don't break the food down properly. Which means then you have eventually the stomach, very often you can get that kind of feeling of, oh gosh, your food is sort of a bit sitting like a stone in your stomach and it's not moving on, but eventually it will move on and go into the small intestine. But partially digested food is exactly what the pathogenic bacteria in our guts like to eat. Now, we all have good and bad. And to put it into perspective, for every 1 cell in your body, you have 10 bacteria in your gut. So it's a tube that is completely teeming with life. But we need the balance to be right. You know, we all have good and bad in there, but we want the good guys to be running the show. And if we've got partially digested food going through into the gut, that tends to feed the more pathogenic bacteria. So it means that, you know, those pathogenic bacteria, when they feed, they feed in a different way to the good bacteria. So they actually ferment the food, which means that they create gas and bloating. And so that's, you know, it's a hugely common complaint that I get, you know, with clients, you know, the gas and the bloating thing. And of course, that gas and bloating can back up pressure into the stomach. You can get then a bit of acid or even acid fumes leaking up into the esophagus, which is when you get the kind of heartburny things. Unfortunately, if you go to the doctor with heartburn, they will give you acid suppressants. Now, that can solve the problem in that, you know, it relieves the symptoms, but actually you then, from then on, you know, when you're suppressing your acid levels, you have compromised digestive function and you will not be breaking your food down properly and you won't be absorbing. So, you know, long term, there's lots of research to show that, you know, people who are on long-term acid suppressants get things like osteoporosis because they're not absorbing the nutrients to keep their body healthy and strong. So that is a kind of priority for me. If you're getting any kind of digestive symptoms, it's all about balancing up the gut bacteria. You know, we can take probiotics. I love doing it with food, you know, and lots of, you know, fermented foods, things like sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, kefir. If you struggle with dairy, I would suggest that you try raw milk. I have a lot of clients who can't do normal milk, but when they have raw milk, they're absolutely fine. Raw milk, I don't know, I hope I'm not sort of teaching my grandmother to suck eggs, but basically raw milk, because it hasn't been pasteurized, it's still got all the wonderful enzymes in it, which help you to break the milk down. But also it hasn't been homogenized. So when they homogenize the milk to stop, you know, it forming a layer of cream on the top. You know, when I was little, you'd get a nice bottle of milk with a nice sort of wodge of cream on the top, which was fabulous. And now that's obviously not the done thing. So they effectively change the fat structure, the structure of the fat molecule in the milk so that it doesn't separate out. The trouble is with that, when you mess about with nature and you drink that milk, your body's like, I don't recognize that fat structure. It's not natural. I think we maybe have to just treat that as suspicious and an enemy. And you can kind of create these situations where the immune system is just rumbling along on a sort of slightly high alert situation. And so, yeah, those kind of things can really just, you know, when we've got a highly alerted immune system, that just creates more inflammation in the body. The other thing about feeding our good bacteria is eating kind of prebiotic foods. So that's your kind of leeks and garlic and artichokes and asparagus. There's all sorts of wonderful things that we can do to kind of nurture our gut bacteria.
So where would somebody, sorry to interrupt, where would somebody obtain raw milk? Because I've heard of that, but I don't know where you would get that. So I
Yeah,
just thought our
sure.
viewers might like to know.
It's a slightly, you have to go into the underworld. I mean, we have somewhere, fortunately, about 10 minutes down the road, it's a farm, and you can literally turn up at the farm and get the milk from them. So it's probably best if you kind of Google in your local area. Generally, I find there are places that are doing raw milk, because more and more people are finding that, you know, raw milk does work. And if you can kind of turn it into kefir, or, you know, it's really easy to get the kefir grains, you just sort of, you know, add your raw milk with, you know, it's a bit warm, and you put it somewhere quite warm and leave it for a few days, you know, or a week. It slightly depends on, it slightly depends on how strong you like your kefir. Some people like it really kind of powerful, but just, yeah. So that's kind of nurturing our gut bacteria. The other thing is about, with regards to eating and helping the digestive response, if we can, there is a thing called the cephalic response. So that is your response to food. And very often in this day and age, you know, we're grabbing something out of the fridge, it's kind of already made, and, you know, shoving it in, and our body's like, oh God, I didn't know you were about to eat. We haven't prepared properly. We haven't got the stomach acid levels up. We haven't got the digestive enzymes. So I always say, if people are having digestive issues, to try and just sit for a minute before, in front of your food, and look at it, smell it, you know, digest it with your eyes. Which then allows the body to kind of produce all the things that it should be doing. And also that whole thing of, you know, if we are stressed and we're running at 1,000,000 miles an hour, just taking a minute to sit and be calm before we actually eat something can be really helpful. If you are still really struggling with kind of digestive symptoms, then you can take stomach acid and digestive enzyme supplements. The only thing that I would say, don't take the stomach acid if you've got anything like ulcers or you're getting bad acid reflux, until we can get so that situation calmed down. But digestive enzymes on their own are a fabulous resource, and you can just take them, and yeah, it just helps you kind of break the food down so that you're going to have less of a reaction further down the down in the gut.
Is there any brands that you would recommend at all?
Oh, there's lots, but a good one I really like, it's called Proven Probiotics. And they do an adult sort of acidophilus and bifidus mix, but quite high doses. I think that you can either get a 25 billion or a 50 billion, but again, you know, which sounds quite high, but actually when you talk to the guy from Proven Probiotics, you went, that's a drop in the ocean. But, you know, we do, you know, he tries to get his, you know, levels up really nice and high. The other thing that kind of is, maybe I might mention about the gut, and the fact that, you know, when we are running a lot of stress, our bodies, the gut wall becomes a little bit more permeable, in a bid to help us kind of absorb our food more easily. But the trouble is with that can end up with, you know, heading towards leaky gut and things like that, which I'm sure most of you probably have heard of. But that's where the tight junctions between the cell walls on the gut wall surface are just not as tight as they should be. So you can get food proteins leaking through into the bloodstream. The immune system goes, oh, that shouldn't be there. Let's create antibodies. And you then have this permanently alerted immune system that has to investigate all this stuff that leaks through the gut wall. Now, generally, our immune system is reacting to proteins. And in the world of proteins are made up of strings of amino acids. There are only 22 amino acids in the protein alphabet. So if you can imagine, you know, the gazillion different amounts of proteins we have, there's going to be similar sequences within those proteins. So that is how for instance, you know, you've eaten a slice of bread, you've got a gluten protein that's leaked through into the bloodstream, and the immune system has looked at it and gone, oh yeah, right, that shouldn't be there, let's create antibodies to that. But those antibodies are then going around the body on their surveillance job, and they're going, oh, there's a very familiar sequence in that gluten molecule on that thyroid cell. I think we need to attack. You know, our body, our immune system is amazing, but it is a bit, if in doubt, let's attack. So this is where you get the autoimmunity arising, and where our body is, you know, starting to attack our own tissue. And it doesn't have to be the thyroid, it can be absolutely anywhere in the body. And I think when I wrote the book, there was about 80 different recognized autoimmune conditions, but there's a lot more than 80 different types of tissue in the body. And I think that will be rising all the time, you know, as we continue with this stress pandemic and gut issues. I think autoimmunity, and when I started practicing, I very rarely saw people with autoimmune conditions, and now they are literally, everybody seems to have some kind of autoimmunity that's rumbling on. And you know, if I have people with a lot of autoimmunity in the family, I always recommend that they do a test which looks to see whether they've started to generate antibodies to all the main parts of the body tissue, which is, you know, and it means then that, you know, you can start to see a picture and you can go, okay, so there's a little bit starting here, let's catch it and we'll heal up the gut and deal with that before it then progresses into something else. I mean, the wonderful thing about autoimmunity is it is reversible, and I think unfortunately most people, well, if you go to the conventional doctors, they go, well, that's it, that's the end of the story, there's nothing you can do. But you may well have heard of an amazing woman called Dr. Terry Walls. She had MS. She was in, it's WAHLS. She was in a wheelchair, and she was a doctor, and she just like, this isn't working for me. And so she went on this phenomenal journey. She is now out hiking with her children, biking, you know, you naming, you know, whatever. I mean, just phenomenal. But had to take a really multi-pronged approach to her healing, as well as the emotional stuff, you know, and that's something that I find that I'm doing more and more with clients, is having to unpackage that stuff, because very often stresses, mostly from childhood, are running the show, so that people are very overreactive to events that really don't require much of a reaction, but because they're kind of looking at it through their lens, it is very stressful. Sorry, so we've wandered into all sorts of different areas. So yeah, with regard to food and kind of helping our stress response, it's all about keeping our blood sugar levels even. You know, when we're preparing to fight the saber-toothed tiger, we've got a lot of cortisol in the system, which is raising our blood sugar levels for us to do our fighting and our running away. So that situation can spike your blood sugar levels, to which, unless you are fighting or running away, your body, and you're not burning off the sugar, you are then going to have to produce insulin to bring the levels back down. So the insulin will go around to all the cells saying, you need to take up the sugar, because sugar is bad news. It sticks to things, it sticks to your blood vessel walls, you know, white blood cells, red blood cells, all that kind of thing. But, you know, insulin's really quite powerful, and it can then give you that blood sugar dip. Whenever we get a blood sugar dip, we're then asking the adrenals to produce more cortisol to level us out. And I think when people are stressed, very often, you know, when they start to get that blood sugar dip, they go, oh God, I need a coffee and a biscuit. You know, so you have your coffee and your biscuit, then your blood sugar levels go shooting up again. So you end up spending the day, you know, roller coastering along, peaking and troughing, and that kind of post lunch, oh God, I need to put my head down the desk just for a little snooze moment, you know, to then, you know, having a coffee, being alert for a bit, and then, you know, it's just, it makes it very hard work for the adrenal glands, because they're always having to kind of balance things out. And it's quite stressful for the body when it doesn't have a nice even source of fuel. It's always slightly going, oh God, are we going to be high? Are we going to be low? I don't quite know where we're going to be. So my kind of rules of thumb for trying to keep blood sugar levels even is protein, protein, protein. Always try to make sure that you're having some protein at every meal or snack. Now, for me, 3 meals a day is a bit of a social convention. It's not necessarily what everybody's body likes to run on. Having said that, if you've got very disordered blood sugar levels and you get kind of dizzy, shaky, wobbly, hangry, irritable, that means that your adrenals are tired, and it's not great to go for long periods of time without food. Because you're just asking the adrenals to work really hard. I spoke to a client yesterday who is kind of running on stress, but he is getting up in the morning. He goes, oh, I never have breakfast, going for a 35-mile bike ride into the office, you know, doing a morning's work, fueling on coffee, and then he'll have something at lunchtime. And I went, your adrenals are really having to work hard to keep you, you know, to give you the energy for you to be able to do that. So, you know, we have negotiated either a handful of nuts or a small smoothie, but my smoothies tend to be maybe 1 portion of berries, lots of green stuff, but a good dollop of protein. So either you can put, you know, nuts and seeds in, you know, sometimes I use a raw egg. That works really well. Just for people, if they're a bit squeamish, then just don't tell them that there's a raw egg in there. I did it for my children for years and years, until one day I was rumbled. I said, look, I've been giving you this smoothie for the last 2 years. And they went, oh, okay then. So yeah, it's just, yeah, the protein is really, really key. And if you are having carbohydrate, it's just having it as nutty and seedy and grainy and as unrefined as you possibly can. My general rule of thumb is, you know, with any food that we are eating, we want to just have it as basic, you know, back to basics as possible. The less messed about with our food has been, the better. So if you can get it out of the field and into the kitchen, whatever it is, you know, and into the oven, then that's my way of eating. So again, you know, when you're eating stuff that's really unrefined, you know, it's harder work for the digestion, so that, you know, it slows the digestive process down, which means the energy release from that food is going to be much slower and will just last you for longer. The other thing I will say about fuel for the body is, you know, I hope that, you know, well, this is changing, but I don't think it's changing in the mainstream world, that fat is a really good fuel for the body. It doesn't spike your blood sugar levels. It doesn't require an insulin response. We've all been told that fat makes us fat, and it really doesn't. It's the sugar and the carbohydrates that's driving this insulin sugar story. So I, you know, often say, you know, if people are needing more energy, you know, if you're having your vegetables, you know, lots of olive oil, or, you know, big dollop of butter on, you know, if you're cutting down on the carbohydrates, you can, you know, the extra calories can come from fat. And fat makes food delicious, and it's much more satisfying. So you get to the end of the meal and you're less likely to have that, ooh, hunting around for that little kind of something, never quite, you know, feeling full and satisfied. So yeah, those are my kind of basic rules. If you are, if you've got really disordered blood sugar levels and it's affecting your sleep, so very often what can happen is, if you're very wired, people struggle to get off to sleep. But if you're not, but the blood sugar levels are a bit all over the place, what can happen is you can get off to sleep and then you tend to wake up. The window is about 2 till 4. So what's happening there is that the blood sugar levels are dropping. You haven't got enough energy in the adrenals to produce the cortisol to bring the blood sugar levels up. Now, when our blood sugar levels drop, our brain is very sensitive to that, and we'll have a bit of a panic, sends a message, emergency message to the adrenal glands and goes, help, help, we're about to run out of sugar, produce cortisol, but actually because we're having an emergency, maybe a little bit of adrenaline as well, which can wake you up. And if you wake up on adrenaline, and you're a slightly wired kind of person anyway, your brain's going to kick in and you're going to lie there thinking about all the things that you have to do tomorrow, and that you're going to be so tired because you're not sleeping, and all that kind of thing. So I generally tend to say, if people can have a very small protein snack at bedtime, it can just help to keep their levels going through the night. It's also important to kind of just look at your bedtime routine, with regards to kind of straying off food, things like, are you looking at your screen just, within, I would say, within the sort of 2 to 3 hours before going to bed, you really ideally shouldn't be looking at that blue light. I know there's lots of computers and things that can go on to night mode. For me, that's not enough. I still, what actually I've done, because sometimes, we have to be realistic. Sometimes we do need to be on the computer in the evening. I have a pair of lovely amber glasses. I will show you. They're very fetching. My children think they're really embarrassing, but I don't really care. So, just protecting yourself from that blue light, because what will happen is the blue light gets detected by the pineal gland. The pineal gland goes, oh, daytime, bright lights. Let's suppress all the wonderful hormones that help you get off to sleep, like melatonin. And yeah, that, looking at your screen time in the evening. Also, just being aware of, if you're watching TV, what you're watching, because our bodies can't differentiate between what we're watching on a screen and reality. So if I put monitors on your body while you're watching a thriller, your blood pressure will be up, your heart will be pumping, blood sugar levels will be up. And so if you watch those kind of things in the evening, it means that you're going to bed full of stress hormones, and that is not, the body's like, ooh, not safe to go to sleep. This is not, a good, cozy, wonderful, calm environment. So that can really make a big difference. And so it's about kind of creating this lovely, calm, nurturing couple of hours before you go to bed. Ideally, in a perfect world, I'd love you to be having an Epsom salt bath with some nice candles, soothing music, or a lovely book to read, or just, creating that time. And I think that's really, really important for therapists, because I think as women, we live in this, I don't know if you got any men in the therapy group, but as
Yes.
we still live in a patriarchal society where basically women are given the role of caring and looking after everybody. But if you're a therapist, you can ramp that up times 100. And so, it's something that I've had to learn the hard way, that it's really, really important to create the space in your day to just have those even little 5-minute slots through the day where you might just sit and breathe, or you might go and sit outside on the grass, or just to help replenish you, because we do give so much, when you are dealing with clients. And I think it's really an important part of my learning, is that yes, I can help clients, but I can't do it if I'm not in a good place. So that for me is a kind of really important part. I'm just thinking about kind of other things that are, important for self-care. I mean, the breathing thing, it's so kind of basic, but I find, well, with most of my clients, they're all not breathing properly, because we when we're born, if you watch a lovely newborn, I mean, breathing, their little tummy is going up and down. I mean, it's a joy to behold. And then life gets thrown at us and we all start breathing more and more shallowly up in our chest. And that lovely kind of belly breathing just disappears. So for me, you know, one of my greatest tools for just, you know, giving myself a bit of a moment is just going, what is my breathing doing? Because, you know, when you're being wound up, it gets more shallow. And when we're breathing, we kind of employ both sides of the nervous system. So we've got our, you know, fight, flight, sympathetic when we breathe in, and you've got your parasympathetic rest and digest when we breathe out. And you know, if you sit and take your pulse when you're breathing quietly, you will notice that your pulse goes very slightly faster when you're breathing in than when you're breathing out. I mean, it's really an amazing thing to behold. So my kind of, what I try and do is lengthen my out breath as much as I can, you know, in a relaxed manner. So maybe, you know, in for 4 and out for 8, but might be in for 3 and out for 6. Depends on, you know, however it works for you. It's, you know, we want this to be relaxing. But sometimes, you know, if you practice this and as you go along, you can get to a stage where you might be in for 4 and out for 16, you know, and you get that lovely long, you know, where the body's just going, oh, this is bliss, you know, I can really start to relax. So yeah, breathing, I think is always my first port of call to go to, if I'm kind of just know that I've got a really busy day. The other thing that I do talk about in my book is that that whole thing of not timetabling your day back to back with stuff, because if things go wrong, you're then totally chasing your tail. So I do try and factor in spaces so that if I get late, it's not the end of the world. I miss my break, but I'm not then under pressure. And it's a real tendency of mine, and I think it probably kicks into that kind of you're only a worthwhile person unless you're achieving it. So, you know, sort of pack your day as much as you can so you feel terribly worthwhile at the end of the day, but actually yeah, that doesn't work long term and you just end up feeling utterly exhausted.
Sorry, I was going to say, I'm assuming from what you've said so far as well, with the grazing element of kind of maybe taking on smaller portions, if you like, rather than 3 big, that would actually, I can see, might work quite well for therapists, especially at the moment when they're they're snowed under. Absolutely. Having to just take on consultations because they've spent a year and a half not having any. Yes. So in a sense, them having, like you say, you know, sort of, you know, apples or berries, which I know are kind of the low GI, aren't they? And then having the protein there that they can have with that, you know, the apple with peanut butter and that kind of thing. Absolutely. Means that then their blood sugar is kind of staying a bit more level, which means hopefully, by the sounds of it, if that continued throughout the day, which I know it sometimes doesn't, with all good intentions, that their blood sugar is going to be a bit more level at the end of the day. So they're not coming out going, oh my God, I need that glass of wine and I need sugar and I need.
Absolutely. Yes. No, I think in that you're so right. You know, at the end of the day, if you've allowed your tank to really get low, you know, you come out of consultation and that's, you kind of hit the fridge and all the things that you shouldn't be having, ideally. So yeah, it's that kind of maybe making sure that that 4 o'clock slot, you have a little protein something, so that, you know, by the end of the day, you're not running on empty. So yes, absolutely, little and often. You know, ideally in a perfect world, if we were all completely zen and, you know, living the kind of lifestyle that we should be, I would say 2 meals a day, or even 1 meal a day. I know Deepak Chopra, I think he runs on 1 meal a day. But you know, that just doesn't work for, you know, you as a therapist, very often you don't get much breaks. But that again is something that we create for ourselves. And I think it's unfortunate we kind of live in this society where it's deemed okay not to have a lunch break. You know, and in France, they always go, oh, you know, the French paradox, they, you know, they eat all this kind of, you know, drink all this red wine and have all this fat and all this kind of thing. But the way they eat is just, you know, they eat properly, they sit down, they chat with their friends, they, you know, take time out. And so it's not always just about what you're eating, it's how you're eating it. And so, yeah, there's, I mean, you know, you could sort of go on for forever. In a perfect world, I just create space. I think probably that's my main job for people, is giving them permission to create a little bit of space for themselves so that they do have time to eat properly and maybe take a bit of exercise and sleep properly and all those kind of things. And if you get those basics in place, it can just have such a profound effect on the kind of overall well-being of the body.
And what about water? Because I know, you know, I know when I've had really bad anxiety, I remember, well, it's probably spirit, to be honest, but, you know, they put in my head like, dehydration. And I looked up and it said dehydration does and can create anxiety. And of course, now when you're talking, I'm thinking, okay, it has probably an element to do with the blood sugar, but it made me drink more water and I drink tons more water now than I ever used to.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with, you know, with water intake is that, you know, if we become long-term slightly dehydrated, our body stops telling us that it's thirsty. The thirst mechanism just doesn't work. Or, you know, what's the point of telling your owner that you're thirsty if she's not listening, she or he's not listening? So my general rule of thumb is, if you take your weight in kilograms multiplied by 0.033, that will give you the amount of liters that you should be having to drink in the day. Obviously, tea and coffee don't count because they're dehydrating. Herbal tea is fine. If you're kind of exercising and sweating a lot, obviously that's a little bit more. But that's my kind of general rule of thumb, because everybody goes, ooh, 2 liters a day, but we're all different sizes. And so it is approximately, if you're an average person, it is about 2 liters a day. But, you know, I get some men who are kind of 15, 16 stone. Well, it's 3 liters for them. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, you know, water intake and just making sure that, you know, it's about putting the habits in to make it easy for you. So, you know, get yourself a nice water bottle. And if it's a litre, then make sure that you've had 2 of those through the day, and, you know, keep sipping through the consultations, that kind of thing. And what I will say is that, you know, if you really haven't been used to drinking a lot of water and you start drinking more water, initially you will be peeing a lot, but it just takes a little while for the body to adjust and go, oh God, what do we do with all this water? Actually, it's here to stay. We can actually start using it properly. So it won't go on forever, but yeah. So,
and I know Nikki had a couple of questions, I think, so I don't know whether from what you've said whether they've answered what Nikki had as questions, but I'm going to throw it to Nikki so that
okay, cool,
she can answer them.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually found your book a bit of a relief, because I have an autoimmune condition.
Okay.
And I also have trouble with my digestion. So for me, I was advised to do a low FODMAP diet. Okay. Which, as a vegetarian and having to be gluten-free,
nightmare,
I can't do.
No. You wouldn't have anything else to eat.
No. Your book for me was an absolute relief.
Oh, great. I'm so pleased.
To actually have someone that could address autoimmune, address the digestion, and actually come up with solutions that you can do.
Yeah.
Apart from the kefir thing, because I'm sorry, but I really can't do it.
It's not compulsory. Yeah, oh, well, that's lovely to hear. I just felt so, you know, with writing the book, I felt so passionately. I get so many clients coming through the door, and, you know, we have this discussion explaining the underlying reasons of why their body's gone AWOL. And they're just like, why did my doctor not tell me this? And they're like, because they don't learn about this stuff. They're just, you know, the training is all about medication. And, you know, when you see a client for 10 minutes, you can't really do anything else but throw pills at them. You know, I have the luxury of, well, 2 hours. My initial consultation usually takes 2 hours. I like to allow 2 hours because you can wander in all sorts of different places, and you know, particularly, you know, starting to open up possible emotional cans of worms, you know, and that can't be rushed. So it's a joy, and I just, the body is the most miraculous, incredible machine, and it will heal itself. It just sometimes needs some real kind of environmental change to get itself back on track. But I'm so delighted. Thank you so much for getting my book, and I'm really, really chuffed it's helped.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's nice to have something practical, because personally I will go to the doctors, have blood tests, and they'll say, oh yeah, everything's in the normal range. And you're thinking, well, I'm still feeling horrible.
Yeah.
So whatever you're doing isn't actually helping. So to have something that can come up with practical suggestions and explain.
Yes.
Well, I don't have the time to do that.
No. Well, absolutely. So, you know, you saying that whole thing of, yes, blood tests coming back normal. Oh, there's nothing wrong with you, you know. And I had that with my, I don't know if you read the thyroid chapter, but I had that with my thyroid. And, you know, walking through treacle on a daily basis, going to the doctor saying there's something wrong, and they're going, no, you're absolutely fine. And it was only when I started doing my training, my nutrition training, and we did thyroid and adrenals, and I was like, oh my goodness, that's me. My adrenals are shot. And, you know, because my adrenals were shot, that was having an impact on the thyroid. And it's, people assume if you've got a thyroid issue that, you know, you have to take thyroxine and that's it, there's nothing else that you can do, and it just isn't the case. So yes, I'm hoping to, just, it's about spreading the word, isn't it? That's my mission.
Good for you.
So tell us a little bit more about your book, Kate.
Well, it's kind of effectively looking at our 21st century environment, all the elements in it. So obviously the stress element, you know, blood sugar levels, toxicity, and also nurturing. There's a chapter on kind of nurturing the spirit, because I think that's so important. And increasing our connection with other people and nature. And I think we've, you know, although we're all, you know, looking at each other on screens, which is an amazing thing for us to be able to do, it's not proper, true heart-to-heart connection. And you know, it always takes me back to heart rate variability. And that amazing, you know, when I first discovered this years ago, that, you know, if you're sitting quietly, you know, close-ish to somebody having a lovely coherent conversation, your hearts will sync. They will start to beat at the same time, and you're like, that is just magical. But you can't get any of that on a screen. You know, my body's electrical field just sort of goes out, and there's kind of nothing there apart from nasty electromagnetic radiation. So I just, you know, and I think everybody, you know, so, like I said, so many people came and, you know, were saying, gosh, but this is so amazing, and why is this not mainstream knowledge? The fact that you know, our toxic exposure is phenomenal. I mean, it's desperate now. They've been testing the blood in umbilical cords of babies, and they're just finding horrific levels of toxins, and these little people are being born into a world where they're already kind of full of toxins. So it's just about kind of, yes, taking us all back to basics. Really, I'd love to sort of take us all back to living in caves and having a natural water supply, and, you know, in a dream place. I have a dream, and my long-term dream is to set up a healing center where I would be able to create this perfect environment, you know, would be totally clean, and but yes, that's into the future, particularly I think for cancer patients. I did this amazing cancer training, and the board, I asked the board, I said, if you were diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic cancer, where would you be going in the UK? And they said, well, we wouldn't. There is no integrative cancer clinic in the UK. You'd have to go to Germany, US, wherever. And I was just like, wow, we need to sort that one out. So that's my kind of mission. I've got a big project happening right at the moment, but once that's done, then that's really what I would love to work towards. Somewhere where people can get hyperbaric oxygen chamber and hypertherapy and I don't know, mistletoe therapy and all the amazing, wonderful things that can help. But it makes cancer patients have a really difficult time to be able to access those things. So yeah, sorry, I've wandered totally off piste from nutrition.
No, that's right. I mean, I think you've given, our viewers a lot to look at. Some of the things they might have been doing, some things that they might have been told to do, or they've been recommended to do already. And I'm sure there's people out there like myself where it's like sometimes we need to understand the why. Why are we doing it? What impact does that have? And if we don't do it, what impact is that having? And definitely for me, it took me somebody saying about the blood sugar dips, even you saying about during sleep, of if the blood sugar drops too low, the cortisol comes out, and it's the adrenaline that often wakes you up. And I knew that, often if you're staying up over your sleep time because you're like, no, I want to finish the film, I want to finish it, it's like the body goes, right, cortisol, because you're obviously trying to stay awake, and then you're like, oh, I'm not tired now. And I've said it to a few people, said, well, yeah, it's because your body's had to do that because you've kind of forced past it.
Well, that messes with your circadian rhythm, doesn't it? Our bodies like to go to bed at the same time and get up at the same time, and all that kind of stuff, which is often doesn't fit in with our kind of 21st century society.
And I think even just what you said about the films, again, I mean, this could be for everybody, not just therapists, but definitely, when you get home and probably they've had a really long day, and all they might want to do is just like literally flop onto the settee, they maybe could put the kids to bed, and it's like, now it's my time and I'm so knackered, I'm just going to watch some telly. I'll put on a film, and then they put on like, Final Destination or some film that's full of, drama and, heart pumping stuff. And I can totally relate. I cannot watch those kind of things now. And if I do, I then have to watch something else to bring myself back down. But generally I don't do it in the first place now. So again, even just little things like that they might not have even thought about is really important to them then getting perhaps a better sleep. And I know with the canine flow that I do, actually that taught me more about my gut, because we say with the dogs, their psychological well-being is about 80 to 90% in the gut. And I was like, well, it's similar to us, and I was thinking, my goodness, again, that just shows what we eat, how, and I've seen it in somebody that had to basically redo their kitchen, and I said to them, please, whatever you do, try and eat the best you can, even though you don't have a cooker. Try and get a lot of green veg. You can still use your Nutrininja and all of that kind of stuff. Absolutely. And they didn't. And after 3 months, like you could see the massive downturn in their mental health, because their gut just had loads of ready meals and sugar and milk. So all of this, as I say, I think is really good for therapists. And I think even them just knowing that actually just having small snacks, perhaps while they're even doing the notes from the consult, just having some nuts to hand and things like that they could snack on, and having the water there, can make a really big difference, that they can then move forward. So
I will just say, on the nuts front, ideally not peanuts or cashews, because they're not nuts, they're legumes. And they're not nearly so good for you.
Interesting. All these things that we find out.
Sorry.
I was just going to ask, if somebody watching this back and resonating with some of this and thinking, okay, I'm going to need to make a few adjustments, what would be your best take home? Why, you could try this to start to make the changes that you need for your diet, what would your best advice be?
Gosh, I think, wow. How many things am I allowed?
Oh, Victoria says 5.
5. Okay, 5 things. Okay, so water, you know, do the calculation, make sure that you're drinking enough water. Protein, make sure that you are having good quality protein at every meal or snack, particularly breakfast. Because the trouble is with breakfast, you know, our Western culture, it's like, you know, toast, cereal, and it's a really rubbish way to start the day. You know, generally cereals are quite sugary and people have jam or honey on their toast. I mean, you're just basically just putting sugar into the system. So protein, but definitely at breakfast. I think vegetables. I mean, for me, you cannot have enough vegetables. And you know, if I've got somebody who really needs to kind of clean themselves out, I sort of say, try to have something green at every meal. Even if breakfast is just a, you know, handful of pumpkin seeds.
Are vegetables, just on that note, sorry, are vegetables better for people for their gut raw or cooked? Because there seems to be, I've read things that seem to differ, and I don't know whether it's just a person by person situation.
I think, yes, it's very much dependent on how good your digestion is. You know, if you are stressed, and like we were talking about, the stomach acid levels and the digestive enzymes aren't great, raw food is hard work. But you know, if you've got really robust digestion, then raw is great. But I would also say, you know, maybe more raw in the summer, but through the winter, it's about kind of, you know, nurturing our body. And, you know, when it's cold outside, you don't want to be having a plate of raw vegetables, you know, make it into a lovely soup. And, you know, sort of, it's about, yeah, nurturing and making the body feel loved and cosseted. So yeah, veg, absolutely key. And also the variety. You know, we can get stuck into eating kind of the same kind of veggies. You know, I ask clients, what you know, what do you like? Oh, broccoli, peas and carrots and sweet corn. And I'm like, okay, so peas, carrots and sweet corn are my least favorite vegetables because they are all the sugary ones. So, well, carrots are fine, but, you know, peas and sweet corn really are a bit of a sugar hit. I'm trying to get the kind of the dark green leafies in, because that's really what helps the liver. That, you know, they've got high sulfur levels. So, you know, really lovely things for the liver are sort of, you know, garlic and leeks and broccoli and cauliflower and kale and cabbage. And I mean, it's just, I sort of, yeah, I mean, you know, a lot of my meals, I literally will just chop up a whole cross section of veg, chuck them in a frying pan, you know, with a bit of olive oil. I don't cook them for very long. It's almost like, so they're just kind of hot. You know, chuck on herbs and spices, and again, because the more diversity in your diet, you know, with all these wonderful herbs and spices, all have medicinal qualities. They, you know, if we have a really diverse diet of vegetables, it increases the diversity of the bacteria that we are, you know, growing in our gut. So yeah, and then, you know, a good dollop of protein on the side. So yeah,
that's 3, isn't it? So what would be
3,
your other 2?
sorry.
No, it's fine.
Reduce it. I would just really try and reduce the amount of carbohydrate you have. I think, you got a toast cereal for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, pasta, rice, potatoes for supper. It's just too much. You know, if we think when we were living back in caves, you know, we weren't growing any grains. You know, we would have been foraging. There'd have been a massive amount of roughage. So yeah, try and cut down on the carbs. I mean, if you get my book, there are some recipes in it, but it's not really a recipe book. It's really about giving people ideas of alternative ways of kind of replacing the carbs. So there's a recipe for bread, but it's made with ground almonds and ground flaxseed and eggs, and it's really simple. All the recipes are very simple. I am an incredibly lazy cook. I can't be faffing in the kitchen, so it's literally a sort of fling it in a bowl, mix it up, shove it in a pan, put it in the oven. But so there's bread, there's an alternative porridge, there's an alternative granola. So to give people ideas of like, oh well, I really need my toast in the morning. But it's like, fine, you can have your toast, but this is a different type of bread, and it will fuel you for a long time because it's full of protein.
Where can they get the book from?
Oh yes,
have you got a copy
I was
you can wave in front, or if not, Nikki has, I know.
Yes, so that's the book. And basically, oh, thanks, Nikki. I was going to do a discount for your listeners. So if they go onto my website, if you basically just put in Chaytor-Norris, it will come up with my website. And if you want to buy my book, if you put in the code NatDisp30, so it's basically from the Natural Dispensary. I'll give you the Natural Dispensary ones. I don't know if any of you guys know about the Natural Dispensary, but they're an amazing website that have all sorts of goodies. So it's NatDisp30, and that will give you 30% off. And so yes, that would be brilliant. And
if they want to get in touch with you,
yeah, absolutely, they can get in touch with me through that, or well, there's an email and there's a number on my website, rather than me giving you lots of boring details. So hopefully, yeah, they can contact me there. Oh, I've got one more, haven't I?
You have one last thing to finish us.
Fiber. Just because, constipation is a hugely underestimated problem. And I say it's always something we discuss in detail. I get my Bristol stool chart out. I want to know exactly what people are producing, because people go, oh, my bowel movements are normal, and I go, well, how often do you go? I had one guy who was like, oh, well, once a week, like, that's not normal. And so if you've got stuff sitting in your lower bowel for longer than it should, you end up reabsorbing so many toxins back into the system from that waste. So fiber, and please don't anybody have wheat bran. It's a nightmare. It's so harsh on the gut. But the best form of fiber that I really like is ground flaxseed. Make sure they're ground so that you benefit from the lovely oils inside the seed, because we actually can't break down the outer husk unless it's been ground. Obviously, everybody needs different levels of fiber to keep things moving. Some people can just do it with lots of veg. I have always had a very slow gut, so I need, gallons of fiber. So, I use ground flaxseed, or psyllium husk is another really good one. But nice natural ways of keeping the bowel moving, rather than, laxatives make the bowel lazy, long term not great. But if you are really struggling, magnesium oxide, that's a great way of helping to soften the stool. And it can be taken kind of long term. But what I will say with regards to constipation, it's a sort of a default of the body to be constipated. My question to them would be, what are you not wanting to let go of? And that can take us to some very interesting places.
Absolutely.
So yeah, those would be my 5 things.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you, Nikki, for that question, because I think that was really nice. Just to kind of bullet point it for therapists to be able to go, right, okay, so let's give that a go. And thank you for your contact information. They can then obviously, if they're like, yes, I need to book a consult with you, then obviously that they can certainly do that. So thank you so much for your talk today, and you've shared so much information, as I say, that everyone can take away. They can, excuse the pun, but they can digest it and process it, and start making little changes. And I know I can certainly say from since I've stopped having cereals and toast and bread, and I have different things for breakfast now, and I if I haven't got time for lunch or whatever, and I know I'm short on time, I will have a smoothie that does have, like you were saying, so it's kind of nice to know I am doing the right things of,
brilliant,
you know, spinach and blueberries and a little bit of banana and some avocado, and you know, I sometimes do chuck in some inulin and things like that, and maca powder, and anything I can put in it, and it can either taste vile or it'll taste good, but either way I'm going to drink it. Is the way I tend to do it. But I know I've got a long way to go still, but I can see the difference definitely in all of the things that I'm doing, so I can completely, and you know, as I say, I've learned even more today just about why we're doing what we're doing in certain areas. So yeah, it's been really fantastic. Thank you.
No, total pleasure. Well, thank you for having me.
It's been lovely. It's been lovely.
I was very excited when I saw that it was you.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you, and well done. And I'm just really chuffed that, you know, my book is helping somebody.
So I'm just going to stop recording for a moment. So